That brings us to a rigid constitution. This has to do more with the amendment procedure. Amendment procedure, that's the procedure for its amendment. The one that's talking about written or unwritten constitution is looking at the nature, whether it is bound in one single book or not, whether it is codified or not. But this other classification, this type, is looking at the amendment procedure, whether it is rigid or it is flexible. So here we are saying that a rigid constitution is a constitution that is difficult or slow to change or amend. So it's more about the amendment procedure. So in a rigid constitution, the constitution is difficult to amend or slow to change. So it's either of two things. Either you want to change the constitution that exists completely, or you want to amend certain of its provisions to meet up with modern day practices. So usually, because of a prescribed process of its amendment, most written constitutions prescribe the process of amendment. So prescription of amendments process is another very basic difference between a written and unwritten constitution. A written constitution does not really provide for its procedure for amendment, hence it makes it very flexible and easy for adjustments. But a written constitution is usually rigid because it prescribes the process of its amendments, and it's detailed and lengthy in execution. So AVDIC perceived that the difference between a rigid and a flexible constitution is whether it has a special provision. There is usually that special provision about amendments or not. So all written constitutions have this special provision about its amendments. So most written constitutions are rigid because they make special detailed provision for the process of the amendment. Example, the Constitution of Nigeria, Ghana, the United States, and Australia are examples of countries that practice a rigid constitution, because usually the procedure to amend them are usually prescribed in the constitution itself, and these provisions for amendment are special, they are detailed, and the process is very cumbersome. So that's what makes the constitution a rigid constitution. So now that brings us to the features of a rigid constitution. We have listed 8 features of a rigid constitution. Don't forget, features and characteristics mean one and the same thing. So number 1 feature, which is the most prominent feature, is that it is difficult to amend, very difficult to amend. Number 2, we are saying process of amendment is complicated. We are also saying that the amendment procedure is not just difficult, but it's also very complicated and time consuming. Number 3, most written constitutions are rigid. So most rigid constitutions are written in nature, that they are codified in a single document or compile it in a single document. So that's what makes it written. It's compiled, it is codified in a single document. Remember my earlier illustration of a textbook format. It is bound together in one book. So most written constitutions, most constitutions that are like that, are rigid in nature. So the third feature of a rigid constitution is that it is usually written in nature. Number 4, there are laid down procedures for its amendment. As this constitution provides procedures. It lays down procedure for its amendments. Number 5, rigid constitutions are resistant to change and innovation. So even where there are positive change and innovations, as much as it is rigid so that it tries to prevent abuse of powers by governments, it also has that disadvantage of being resistant to change and innovation, because when an innovation comes, it takes a very complicated and a very difficult process for it to be amended. Number 6, the rights of individuals are enhanced and not subject to arbitrary change. So it enhances the rights of the individual, which is very good because it provides for fundamental rights. And where these rights are infringed, you can go before a court and seek redress. So number 7, decision making is based on general agreement. Decision making, the government of the day cannot just wake up and make any law of their choice. It has to be based on general agreement. It has to go through the stages, go through the House of Rep, go through the Senate before it can be passed in Nigeria. So there are stages to which you go through the first reading, go through the second reading, and all of that be taken to the president for presidential assent. So you discover that such countries that practice a rigid constitution, decision making is based on general agreement, which is very good, but also very cumbersome procedure. Number 8, it ensures political stability. Of course, where there is general amendment, where something is not subject to sudden change, you naturally expect that the country will be politically stable.